KDWN News Time, 9 o'clock. For 20 years, Brian A. Lowe and Associates have helped Las Vegas locals protect against foreclosure and file Chapter 7 and 13 bankruptcy. If you're in trouble, call 259-0002. Good morning. I'm John Schaefer with this hour's top stories. Authorities say an early morning fire at the Carl's Jr. near the intersection of Cheyenne and Rainbow caused about $100,000 in damage. The restaurant was open. 2 employees were inside when the fire was reported about 4:45 this morning.
Just as we were arriving, they evacuated, and when they looked up on the roof, they could see flames coming from the roof area.
Las Vegas Fire and Rescue spokesman Tim Zamansky says the flames were in the attic and around the air conditioning unit on the roof. A man named as the suspect in a shooting and fiery crash on the Las Vegas Strip has made his first appearance in Los Angeles Superior Court. That hearing lasted only about a minute yesterday, resulting in the judge scheduling a March 14th hearing to determine if the man is in fact Amar Harris, the 26-year-old sought in the February 21st violence that left 3 dead on the Strip. Harris didn't speak during the hearing, nor was a plea entered. He was represented by a public defender during the first step toward extraditing him to Nevada. Nevada officials say they're no longer recognizing concealed weapons permits from Arizona after that state relaxed some of its training requirements. The decision takes effect this week after a unanimous vote last Thursday from the Nevada Sheriffs and Chiefs Association, which says the requirements are now too different from Nevada's for the state to recognize the permits. Regulators in Las Vegas are authorizing more cabs on the road after drivers with the city's second-largest cab company walked off the job. Nevada Taxi Cab Authority Administrator Charles Harvey authorized 20 additional permits Monday for each of the 13 other cab companies operating in Clark County. If the companies use all of them, that would mean 260 more cabs in service. Officials with the Taxi Cab Authority say they haven't received reports of disruptions but are issuing extra permits as a precaution to ensure there are enough cabs to accommodate riders. House Republicans have unveiled their plan to keep the government going past the end of the month.
The measure leaves in place the $85 billion worth of cuts that went into effect last week and that agencies are now working to implement. But in an effort to ease the pinch at the Pentagon, it gives the Defense Department a detailed budget for 2013 and does the same for the Veterans Affairs Department. Other agencies are not as fortunate. Their spending is frozen at last year's levels, and that is before the spending cuts are taken into account. The GOP also wants to largely exempt agencies like the FBI and the Border Patrol from the sweeping cuts. Jerry Bodlander, Capitol Hill.
A group of ex-DAA heads think Uncle Sam should nullify Colorado and Washington states' pot laws.
8 former Drug Enforcement Administration chiefs say the clock is ticking and the federal government needs to act now to nullify Colorado and Washington's laws legalizing recreational marijuana use. The one-time DEA heads are issuing joint statements saying the Obama administration has reacted too slowly and should immediately sue to force the states to rescind the legislation. The Associated Press received an advance copy of the statement as the 2 states are pushing ahead to implement their laws. I'm Sandy Kozel.
The financial report brought to you by Las Vegas Jewelry and Coin Buyers. On Wall Street, the Dow is up 149 points. Gold is at $15.75 an ounce. Silver, $28.66. Platinum, $15.83. And palladium, $735.50. For questions about your precious metal or coins, call 547-1670. The news brought to you by Bosch Appliances. Bosch Appliances are ranked highest in customer satisfaction with dishwashers by J.D. Power & Associates. Find great deals on ultra-quiet Bosch dishwashers at your local Bosch dealer. J.D. Power & Associates 2012 Kitchen Appliance Satisfaction Study. It's 9:03. Here's Mitch Kelly with the latest from the KDON 1 Nevada Credit Union Traffic Center.
This report brought to you by Constant Contact. Want your marketing plan to be as stress-free as the open road? Email marketing from Constant Contact's an easy-to-use tool that helps you to reach your customers in a place they're checking every day, their inbox. Sign up for a free trial from the industry-leading provider at ConstantContact.com. Slowdowns through the downtown area on 95 northbound because of a crash at the top of the eastern on-ramp. As I look at it right now, they have a tow truck on scene, and it's blocking all lanes of 95 northbound just before the on-ramp to eastern, so it's going to be extra slow heading through downtown on 95 northbound until they get that SUV on top of the tow bed and hauled away. Much more minor situation, 15 southbound approaching Sahara, that off on the right shoulder. In the southwest, accidents on the South Jones off-ramp from 215 westbound, Sunset west of I-215, and an injury crash, Blue Diamond west of Durango at El Capitan. Also a new one, westbound Tropicana past Dean Martin Drive, that's west of I-15. From the KDON 1 Nevada Credit Union Traffic Center, Mitch Kelly on News Talk 720 KDWN.
The KDWN forecast, partly cloudy, 75 the high, clear 51 overnight, mostly sunny, 71 for Wednesday. Right now, few clouds, 60 degrees in Las Vegas. Your next update at 9:30 or when news breaks, and we're always streaming online at KDWN.com, brought to you by Brian A. Lowe and Associates. I'm John Schaefer, News Talk 720 KDWN.
Are you tired of fighting with your water, dry skin and hair, dingy laundry, unpleasant tastes and odors, stained sinks and fixtures? Well, now is the time to do something about your water. Hi, Alan Stock here, and I wanted to make sure I had the best water system available, so I called Connecticut over 13 years ago. My clothes are brighter, I see no more hard water stains, and the water is the best I've ever tasted. As a matter of fact, people who visit our home always ask for another glass of that delicious water. And the amazing thing is, we haven't had any service calls to fix our system. Now, the experts at Connecticut Water Systems really know their stuff and can customize a solution that's right for your home and your family. Now, the Connecticut water systems are completely different. They require no electricity, there are no customer adjustments, and they don't use a ton of salt. Connecticut Water Systems also features the longest manufacturer's warranty, and it's designed to last 30 years plus. Your local independent authorized Connecticut dealer wants to make it as easy as possible for you to try clean conditioned water in your home by offering a free trial. Go to kwater.com for more details on their free in-home trial. That's the letter K and the word water. kwater.com, and get your trial started today.
More live local talk than any station in Las Vegas. News Talk 720 KDWN. 50,000 watts of news and talk. Be in the know when you're on the go. News Talk 720 KDWN is available wherever you are online at kdwn.com. At kdwn.com. Local, national, and international news, plus weather and traffic, all at your fingertips, all online at kdwn.com.
Need a new car? Come on down to Crazy Jerry's, because I'm slashing prices like crazy. Want a beige 1972 sedan? We got that. Or how about if you want a beige 1972 sedan? We got them in beige, and in beige.
You expect options everywhere else in life. Are you getting them when it comes to your medical treatment? Explore all your options and talk with your doctor about what's right for you. Knowing your options is the best option. Learn more at ahrq.gov. That's ahrq.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
At risk of losing your home in a foreclosure? We can help. We'll deal with your bank, lower your principal. We'll buy you a pony, give you the ability to fly. We'll let you ride a unicorn. We'll give you a...
If you're facing foreclosure, who should you trust? The Hope Hotline is a free resource connecting you with HUD-approved housing counseling agencies available 24 hours a day who can give you the information and clarity you need. Call the Hope Hotline at 888-995-HOPE. That's 888-995-4673. Brought to you by NeighborWorks America and the Ad Council.
The broadcast of information on this show does not create an attorney-client relationship with any of the listeners. Communication between the listener and the hosts of this show will not be confidential. The information provided on this show is prepared for a general audience without investigation into the facts of each particular case and is not to be considered legal advice. The information provided on this show should not be used as a substitute for legal advice. The listener is advised to consult with a qualified attorney on any legal issue they may have. It's time for News Talk 720 KDWN's Legal Hour. Have a legal question? Call now 257-KDWN. That's 257-5396.
KDWN News Time is 9:06. Good morning. Welcome to the Tuesday edition of the KDWN Legal Hour with Airene Williamson, Las Vegas attorney from the firm Williamson Law Office. Airene, good morning.
Good morning, John. Great to be here today.
It is great to have you as well today. Obamacare, the issue you would like to tackle.
Yeah, definitely a controversial topic. It's definitely something that we should be looking to consider when it comes to our business. For better or for worse, the Patient Protection Affordable Care Act, or what's commonly known as Obamacare, is here to stay. And obviously, the November 2012 elections are over. People's hopes that it will be overturned probably not going to happen anytime soon. So we better be ready for it. And businesses have to be ready for it because they're going to be the segment that's going to be most impacted by this law.
All right, a little history on it. What exactly is Obamacare, and how and why has it become such a controversial hotbed issue?
Definitely. You know, Obamacare is one of the biggest, probably the most comprehensive healthcare overhaul in the history, aside from the Medicare Medicaid Act, probably 50, 60 years ago. But what has become so controversial is the features that Obamacare brings to us. And obviously, it's become a highly debated issue in the country. And one of it is obviously the individual mandate. Under the individual mandate is obviously either you get insurance or you pay fee or tax or penalty or however they want to call it. Basically, the idea is that, or arguments for the individual mandate is that the folks or individuals go to emergency rooms anyway. They utilize the healthcare services, and the idea is the individual mandate will force those people to make payments on healthcare services that they are already using. And that's one of the individual or mandate arguments that people have put forth, or the proponents of Obamacare. And obviously one of the arguments is that people are getting sicker when they don't have preventative care. That's why they have individual mandates. And hospitals are obviously incurring costs because people are going there. Hospitals can't turn them down. They have to provide health care. And guess who's paying for those healthcare, or those clients or paying customers? They take on the burden of those hospital costs. And lastly, the argument for individual mandate is that you're already paying for healthcare services that you're already getting. So those are the arguments for it. But obviously, we have the other side of the aisle that have arguments against it.
Yeah, and I would guess one of those biggest arguments is if I'm going to the hospital and using the emergency room as my primary care physician and can't afford to pay for it, it's because I can't afford to pay for medical care, so I can't afford to pay for insurance that the government is telling me that I now have to pay for.
Exactly. And that is one of the biggest contention against this Obamacare, is that basically the government is dictating what you shouldn't buy. And health insurance is one of them. And people have said, well, car insurance is the same thing. And that's one of the most popular arguments, is that car insurance, you're mandated to have a car insurance or prove to the DMV or to the government that you have the ability to pay for any liabilities. But the counter argument to that is, obviously, you don't have to have a car insurance. You don't have to have a car. A health insurance, that's something you have to have, or either that or you'll be penalized, or the government will help you subsidize for getting an insurance. So that's why it has been such a controversy.
Yeah, and they're not
lately.
telling everyone you have to have car insurance. If I don't have a car, like you said, I don't have to have car insurance.
Exactly.
But I have to have health care whether or not I go to the doctor.
And one of the question is individual mandate, and we're just on the first feature of this Obamacare. There's a lot of features that people are debating about, but is this a fair situation? Well, it will depend on the cost. What's the penalty? And I think that's where the confusion is coming in. What is the penalty at this time? Well, the penalty will be instated in 2014. In 2014, it will start as $95, which seems to be very small, or 1% of your annual gross income, whichever is greater. Obviously, the 1% will obviously be the one that will be instituted against you. If, for example, if you are an individual who is making $50,000, you will be paying 1% of your annual gross income a year. And that's obviously larger than $95. And by 2016, I believe it's 2.5% of your annual gross income. Either $695 for an individual, or $2,000 or $2,085 for a family, or 2.5% of your annual gross income, whichever is greater.
So basically, anyone that makes $10,000 a year or more, which would be considered way below the poverty line, is going to be paying more than the $95, because 1% of your $10,000 is already more than the $95.
That's correct. But there's some provisions for people that are making below the poverty line for subsidies. And that's another controversial topic or feature of Obamacare. Let's go to subsidies first. Subsidies is for, and it's just a general look on this. I'm not in any way making this as detailed as possible because we don't have time for it. But basically, if you are under a federal poverty level, you will be subsidized by the government to get those healthcare insurance. And we'll talk about that more in businesses later. But that's one of the controversy. Who's ended up paying for it? Obviously, that's going to be you or me. And the second feature of this is pre-existing conditions. The goal of Obamacare is to make it easier for everyone to have access to health care, and that includes those people that are very sick. If you are unfortunate enough to have a severe form of cancer, for example, and you want to have insurance right now, that's going to be expensive, obviously, or you're going to get denied coverage. So under the pre-existing condition feature, under the Obamacare, they can no longer deny or determine premium rates on your pre-existing conditions.
I understand that, it does seem unfair that people with pre-existing conditions have problems. But to go back to the car insurance analogy, if I have 2 DUIs, my car insurance company is allowed to charge me a much higher premium if they will even insure me at all. So that's a pre-existing condition of me being a poor driver. And the government doesn't say, well, that's not fair. You can't do that. Everyone has to have the same rate.
Well, in effect, because of this pre-existing condition feature of Obamacare, I believe your premium rates will go up. There's no way around it. Basically, there's 2 40-year-old individuals. One is very healthy, and the other one has, for example, a severe form of cancer. An insurance carrier can no longer determine your insurance premium based on your sickness. They can only base it on either age and geographical location. So if you're both from Nevada, You both pay the same premium, but guess how it's going to go? I mean, how is that going to how will the insurance carrier spread that? Basically, it's got to be a higher insurance rates for everyone. That's the effect of a pre-existing condition, and that's one of the biggest controversy right now is how does this pre-existing condition affect the premium insurance or the rates or premium rates of people that are paying.
All right, we will be back with the Kate on Legal Hour. Airene Williamson from the Williamson Law Office. We are discussing Obamacare. 257-5396. If you have a question or comment or would just like to join in the conversation on Obamacare, right now we're going to check in with Mitch Kelly in the Kate on 1 Nevada Credit Union Traffic Center.
This update at 9:15 brought to you by the City of Las Vegas. City of Las Vegas animal control officers responded to hundreds more residents' calls over the last year, helping reunite lost animals with their owners and more. Visit www.lasvegasnevada.gov/yourcityworks to learn more about how your city works for you. Still seeing slowdowns through the downtown area because of a wreck at the top of the eastern on-ramp to 95 northbound. For a time, there was a tow truck on scene blocking all lanes of 95 northbound. Everything's now off on the right shoulder, but you still have residual delays approaching that accident. Minor wreck 15 southbound approaching Sahara's off on the right shoulder. Injury accidents in the southwest on Sunset west of I-215 at Roy Horn. Also Blue Diamond west of Durango at El Capitan. And one west of I-15 westbound Tropicana past Dean Martin Drive. Your next update's at 9:30. And from the Kate on 1 Nevada Credit Union Traffic Center, I'm Mitch Kelly on News Talk 720 KDWN.
Hi, everybody. Ray Lucia, certified financial planner and host of The Ray Lucia Show, inviting everyone in Las Vegas to join me and the team I call the Brain Trust for some smart money strategies. Don't miss The Ray Lucia Show, weekdays 10 until noon on News Talk 720 KDWN.
Interested in making some extra money? Listen to How to Make Money with One Click every Sunday from 3 to 3:30 on News Talk 720 KDWN. Jack and Jill will talk about just that, how to make money with one click. Sunday afternoons at 3, only on News Talk 720 KDWN.
Strategies and Solutions with America's Retirement Authority, Ray Lucia CFP.
You know, sometimes it's easier to save money than it is to make it. And one way to save, by the way, is to be aware of the bank fees that you're paying. Do you use an ATM that charges a fee? Did you realize that if you withdraw $20 and are charged $1.50 for the transaction, you've in effect paid a 7.5% surcharge for the use of your own money? So look for ATMs that don't entail a fee. Also, be careful not to bounce checks. Typical fees for a check written against insufficient funds range from $20 to $25. If several checks bounce before you catch on, your inattention could easily cost you $100 or more. And if you're using a bank account to save money, are you paying a monthly fee? Doesn't make sense, does it? You should only pay fees in areas where the services add value, not take cash out of your pocket.
For retirement strategies and solutions and to learn about the Ray Lucia Bucket Strategy for Retirement, call 877-PLANNER or go to rayonthemoney.com.
Now back to KDWN's Legal Hour. Have a legal question? Call now. 257-KDWN. That's 257-5396.
KDWN News Time, 9:18. Welcome back to the Kate on Legal Hour. 257-5396. The number to call if you have a comment or question to join in the conversation about Obamacare with attorney Airene Williamson from the Williamson Law Office. And Airene, we were covering some of the important features of Obamacare. What about costs? I mean, where are these costs coming from, these subsidies? Who's paying for it?
Well, we are, the short end of it. But basically, Obamacare, the goal of Obamacare is to make it, or at least theoretically, to make it for everyone to have access to health care in the most or least cost. But the problem is somebody has to pay for this system. Somebody has to pay for the oversee of all these regulations. And that has translated into higher Medicare tax in general. I'm not going to get into more details of it, but later on it's going to be a two-part series because it's such a huge topic to cover. But basically, Medicare tax will increase, and that is predicted to pay about $200 billion a year. That's going to be a high revenue source for the IRS and for the government to pay for the health care. It's going to be a higher fees for insurer carriers. They will raise the premium rates. They will raise the excise tax. Somebody has to pay for it. So that's going to be one of the areas. But one of the biggest impact of this Obamacare is on businesses because they are the ones who are working at this point and paying taxes. So they are going to be the biggest source of this Obamacare.
So what are some of the requirements for businesses? You know, there's been a lot of talk, some big corporations, I'm going to have to lay people off. We're letting people go because this is going into effect and we can't afford it.
Right. Where do I begin?
Yeah.
It's a big obligation. And one of the problem of the Obamacare at this point is nobody really knows how this is going to affect businesses, mainly because nobody understands what the Obamacare is. We have a 2,000-page Obamacare that nobody understands. Accountants are still grasping the regulations. Attorneys, like we are still waiting for guidance from the IRS and how this is going to be interpreted. HR people are still getting trained, and there's a lot of provisions that we don't have a guidance from the IRS. But we are waiting on that. But basically, as a business, your obligation under the Obamacare will depend on the size of your company, your workforce, or the composition of your workforce, and whether or not you're providing insurance at this point. And under the Obamacare, there's a long list of terms that you have as a business, as a small business owner, you have to understand or spend dollars on to understand and implement a sort of a compliance procedure in your company to comply with this. And one of the terms that I think there should be a distinction on, because this will affect whether you are under the Obamacare or not, is whether are you a large business or you're a small business. A large business means you have 50 or more full-time employees or 50 or more full-time equivalent employees. That's a large business. And I'll get into that, how you're going to calculate that later. So basically, it doesn't mean that you have part-time employees that you will not be affected by Obamacare. You will, because there's a complicated calculation that will take into consideration whether or not you have 50 full-time equivalent employees. Small businesses means any businesses that have fewer than 50 full-time employees or 50 full-time equivalent employees. Another term that you have to understand under Obamacare is the employer mandate, which is one of the biggest or important feature of the Obamacare, is that if you qualify under a large business, you have to now offer insurance, affordable insurance coverage to your employees that meets the minimum value. Now, I just said a lot of terms there.
A lot of very general terms.
General terms, but basically definitely confusing terms. What is affordable insurance? What does that mean? Basically, if you're a large employee, you have to provide affordable insurance. That means any insurance premium or premium rates that you're charging your employees cannot exceed 9.5% of their gross annual income. You have to make sure that their insurance premium does not exceed 9.5%. And I'll talk about that in a bit. And another thing that you have to provide your employees is essential health benefit package, the minimum health benefit package. What does that mean? Well, nobody knows at this point. Essentially, when they tried to pass Obamacare, the role of determining what's minimum health care benefit package was assigned to Secretary of Human Health and Services to come up with a list of what is the scope of this minimum benefit package. But at this point, they haven't. And so what they have done is they left it to the states to determine what that means. We don't know what that means because it differs from state to state. So it's really become cumbersome and confusing for a lot of people. Another term that is important under Obamacare is you have to provide coverage that meets the minimum value. What's minimum value? It means 60% of actuarial value. I have no idea what that means, John.
I don't either.
But basically, it doesn't mean 60% of healthcare insurance premium. That has to be determined by insurance carrier. But the bottom line is there's so many regulations that you now have to meet if you're a large business. And one of them is, as I said earlier, is affordable insurance. And now, really, the question is, if you don't meet this, if you're already providing coverage, for example, the question is, what are the penalties? And really, that's the bottom line for businesses. What do I have to pay if I don't participate or if I offer insurance coverage that doesn't meet the qualifying coverage the government now is imposing on me?
Because if your penalties are going to be less than what it's going to cost you to provide health insurance, it's cheaper to pay the penalties as a business.
And I think a lot of people are thinking about that, which may or may not be good for a business if they try to create a loophole around that, which we'll talk about later if you are thinking of doing that. But the penalties will depend on whether you are providing coverage at this point or not providing coverage at this point. The simple one, if you are large businesses or a large business and you have more than 50 full-time equivalent employees, which we'll talk about the calculation of that later, you will be and you're not providing any coverage at this point, which is not typical for a large business. Typically they do. But if you're not, you will be penalized $2,000 for each employee. That's the simplistic way of describing it. And if our listeners are confused about that, call me. We'll discuss it. But basically, If you're not offering coverage, $2,000 an employee. If you are offering coverage, on the other hand, it doesn't mean you're scot-free. You don't have a get-out-of-jail-free card. You have to meet the qualifying coverage that I've talked about earlier. And that is important because if your employee, for example, finds that your premium insurance is so high, in fact, if it's so high that it exceeds their 9.5% of their annual gross income, they may go to the exchange. What is the exchange? The exchange is kind of a central market that the government or the Obamacare has set up. Under this Obamacare, basically each state is now required to have a central market wherein people can buy insurance. Individuals as well as employers. They can buy insurance. It's called a shop exchange. If your employee finds that your insurance is so high, they will have the option of going to the exchange depending on when they qualify for it. And if they qualify for subsidy, then you as an employer will get dinged and penalized for it because the idea is for you to provide an affordable coverage. And if you do not provide affordable coverage, that you will be penalized for $3,000.
So this affordable coverage that is 9.5% of the annual gross income, is that 9.5% of the annual gross income of my receptionist who makes the least in my business, or 9.5% of the annual gross income of me, the CEO of the business, who makes hundreds of times more than she does?
That's actually a good point.
Or do you average everyone's salaries together and take the 9.5? Because it's not going to be affordable to your lowest paid employees if it's higher than their 9.5%.
Right. And that's why this is so controversial, because it will depend on the individual employee's annual gross income. Now, remember, annual gross income will include their household. Now, how are you as an employer supposed to figure out what their annual household income is? That will require probably snooping on their household annual income, or if, for example, their spouse lose a job, then their household income just dropped. Now you're going to be penalized for something that is absolutely out of your control.
Yeah, and you have to have a different plan for every employee because everyone's will be different. And in a lot of families, both parents work or both individuals work. Whose do you use?
Exactly. And that's becomes an administrative nightmare for businesses to keep track of. But basically the idea is if you don't provide that affordable coverage that we're talking about, you will be penalized $3,000 for each employee. And that's going to take effect in 2014. So this is the time to figure out what kind of employees you have.
Well, let's talk about that. How do we figure out what kind of employees? I know what a full-time employee is, and I know what a part-time employee is, but I don't know what a full-time equivalent employee is.
Yeah, and nobody does either.
Oh, well, good. That answers that.
There is,
Irene, that seems to be the answer to every question.
Yeah,
nobody knows.
Nobody knows. And that's because a lot of the provisions in the Obamacare, we are still awaiting on the IRS. They usually come up with this, what we call comments on the IRS code to provide us a lot of guidance on how we can implement this. But there is a basic kind of a calculation to do. And the first step for businesses is to figure out how many full-time employees do you have. That's the step one. Full-time employees means any employees that are working 30 hours or more on average a week in a month. So that's step one. So if you have that, count that as one or two or three. If you have 3 employees that are working more than 30 hours, you have 3 full-time employees. Step one. Step two, if you have part-time employees, that becomes a complicated process. So if you are a business out there and you have part-time employees and you want to make sure you're calculating it right, you can call me if this becomes a little bit confusing for you. But what you do is if you have non-full-time employees, you add all the number of hours they work and divide it by 120. 120 is the full-time hours in a month. So divided by 120 and you can come up with a full-time equivalent employee. So that's step two. Step three, now you have to add your full-time employee plus non-full-time equivalent employees to come up with your monthly full-time employees. And if it exceeds 50, then you're under this provision. If not, then you're exempted from it. But basically, it's a lot of calculation. It's confusing. Call me if it's a confusion to you.
All right, we will be back with Airene Williamson. We're going to talk more about Obamacare. We'd like to hear from some small business owners or business owners as well on how you think it's going to affect them or what you plan to do. 257-5396, the number to call. Plus, right now, caller number 5, we have a pair of tickets to go see The Mentalist at Planet Hollywood. 1 pair of tickets for you if you are caller 5 right now at 257-5396. Go see The Mentalist at Planet Hollywood. Right now, news, traffic, and weather on News Talk 720 KDWN.
It feels like you're frozen. petrified. You're struggling with your mortgage payments. The bills begin to pile up. Not knowing what to do, you do nothing at all. And that's the worst thing you can do. Because if you take action, if you do something about your mortgage problems, you're far more likely to get the most positive outcome. Making Home Affordable is a free government program. Call 888-995-HOPE to talk one-on-one with a housing expert about the options that are right for you. Real help, real answers, right now. Call 888-995-HOPE or visit makinghomeaffordable.gov and do something about your mortgage problems. Brought to you by the U.S. Treasury, HUD, and the Ad Council.
50,000 watts of news and talk. News Talk 720 KDWN, Las Vegas, the dawn of today's talk radio.
The Dow is trading at an all-time high. It's up about 138 points at the moment at 14,266. That's up about 9% for the year so far. Stocks have been rallying in part because of optimism that the housing market is now recovering. Our David Melendi takes a closer look.
CoreLogic data shows January home prices jumped nearly 10% from a year ago, with gains in just about every state. Housing analyst Patrick Newport at IHS Global Insight says households added $1.4 trillion to their wealth in real estate over the past year.
In terms of the economy, it's going to play, I think, a pivotal role in getting the economy back on track.
Newport says the surge in real estate wealth will increase consumer spending, boost property tax revenue for states, get more underwater homeowners out of trouble, reduce foreclosures, help banks make loans, and spur housing construction.
Investors are also optimistic the companies are slowly starting to hire again. I'm Rita Foley.
9:32 in the KDON One Nevada Credit Union Traffic Center with an update brought to you by Low Book Sales. Improving conditions on 95 northbound through the downtown area. Had a crash at the top of the eastern on-ramp to 95 northbound, and for a time, all lanes of 95 northbound were shut down while crews worked to get that SUV on the tow bed. But that has been taken care of. In fact, that accident has been cleared. There's one in the same general area, though, northbound eastern, right at US 95. Injury accident in the southwest, top of the Sunset on-ramp to 215 southbound. Also Blue Diamond west of Durango at El Capitan. Other wrecks westbound Tropicana past Dean Martin Drive. That's just west of I-15. Now learning of a new accident on the east side with Clark County Fire and Metro teaming up on Flamingo west of Sand Hill at Pearl. KDWN weather, sunny but breezy with a high of 73 this afternoon. Currently 57 degrees in Las Vegas. And more of the KDON Legal Hour with attorney Airene Williamson's coming up. On the KDON One Nevada Credit Union Traffic Center, I'm Mitch Kelly on News Talk 720 KDWN.
If you need to sell a car, truck, or motorbike, Low Book Sales will guarantee something that you'll like. $250 more, $250 more. Low Book Sales will buy your car and pay $250 more. LowBookSales.com.
Get hammered with the Mike Hammer Comedy Magic Show at the Four Queens Hotel and Casino. Every show is loaded with audience participation, and nobody is safe. Tickets are on sale now at fourqueens.com or at the Four Queens box office.
Do you have hidden treasures laying around your house? Hi, this is John Burnett of Las Vegas Jewelry and Coin Buyers. Join me on Ask the Experts every Monday night at 6 p.m. on News Talk 720 KDWN, where we will discover valuables you have that you can convert to cash.
We have great news. We can now refinance your home no matter how upside down you are. If you're current on your payments, contact us today to see if your loan qualifies. You could potentially lower your rate and monthly payment. Visit us at onenevada.org today or call 382-4094. One Nevada Credit Union, federally insured by the NCUA Equal Opportunity Lender.
24/7 private vault. Better than a bank.
Mr. Relly, the 24/7 private vaults. We have a lot of gun vaults, a lot of gun safes. You can store most of them with us and keep one or two in the house. You don't have to have 10 of them in a house, because if you do, somebody's going to rob you. Call me at 948-5555. 948-5555.
24/7 private vault. Better than a bank.
The Nevada congressional delegation shares the latest from Capitol Hill on the Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce Show, Sunday mornings at 7:30, here on News Talk 720 KDON.
Now that it's March, it's time to march into that new job you've been looking for. Find it at the LasVegasJobs.com Job Fair, Thursday, March 7th at Texas Station from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. This is your opportunity to meet with dozens of employers who have hundreds of real jobs available. Be sure to dress for success, bring lots of resumes, and be ready to apply for your new job. You can go to LasVegasJobs.com now to print your VIP pass. March into a new job Thursday, March 7th at Texas Station from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Go to LasVegasJobs.com for more information.
Now back to KDWN's Legal Hour. Have a legal question? Call now. 257-KDWN. That's 257-5396.
KDWN News Time 9:35. Welcome back to the Tuesday edition of the KDWN Legal Hour with Las Vegas attorney Airene Williamson from the Williamson Law Office. Number at her office if you'd like to get a hold of her, 608-4072, or you can reach her by email at info@wlawoffice.com. Obamacare, the topic today with the attorney, and we have been talking about its impact on business, its impact on the individual, and we now have a phone call for you, Airene, about Obamacare. Good morning, Jim.
Good morning. Thanks for taking my call.
Good morning, Jim. How are you?
Oh, I am just absolutely phenomenal. My question being that I am a business owner, and it's a very, very small shop. It's me, my wife, and one other person. And but I regularly put in, and my wife regularly puts in north of 60 hours a week, sometimes north of 90 hours a week. Do I count, like, myself as CEO, because it is incorporated, do I count every block of 30 hours as one employee?
Well, first of all, you, as a small business, you probably don't qualify as a large business under Obamacare. You are less than 50 full-time, I would believe. I don't think you have any other workers with you, but it doesn't mean that this Obamacare doesn't apply to you, even though you are not required to provide health care coverage to your employees because you're under 50. First of all, you're still under the individual mandate, which means you still have to get insurance for you, your wife, and your kids. Number two, you have requirements under Obamacare, even if you're small business owners, that you have to do. And one of them, and I'm not going to go through a lot of them today because there's a lot, but one of them is, first of all, you have to adjust your W-2s to now include, there's a W-2 form that is now updated to include a line in which you have to disclose your employees and your healthcare coverage so that they can audit your business to make sure that you're in compliance. So that's number two. Number three, you have to now post a notice if you are, either now or if you're thinking of expanding your business, you have to post a notice of the availability of the so-called exchanges. That's a requirement under the Obamacare that not a lot of employers know. Under 2013, this is in effect now. So you have to provide notice of the availability of the exchanges, what are the insurance coverage that they're providing, what kind of insurance premiums they're providing, what are the benefit levels that they're providing. Those are the information that you have to post or distribute to your employees, even if you are under 50 or below a full-time equivalent employees. There's a lot more. And actually, I have a client last week and say, I have under 50 employees. I don't have to worry about Obamacare. And I say, absolutely not. You have to worry about it because now you are more affected than ever. And lastly, and this could be a benefit to you, Jim, is that you may have an applicable tax credit if you're a small employer, I should say, and you have employees that you're providing coverage with. You may be, or you may qualify for a tax credit. You might want to talk to your accountant. Okay, that's a lot of them. So,
yeah,
there's definitely a lot of requirements that you have to keep in mind.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. So before we get to the next caller, when you talk about this whole having to post or provide the information to your employee about the exchanges in your state, except that the state hasn't come up with the exchanges yet, so how do you provide that information to them? Good point.
When they released Obamacare, the Department of Labor and Human Health Services, or either the IRS, was supposed to give you a template of what kind of notification you have to provide. The problem is there is no exchanges in a lot of states right now. It's hard to follow something that doesn't exist. It's hard to have a notification on people that doesn't exist. So we don't know how you're going to be penalized on something that doesn't exist at this point. Although I want to point out that Nevada does have an exchange at this point. It's the Silver State Exchange. It's in effect, as far as I know. It's up and running, and you might want to look at their website to see what kind of requirements they have.
All right. 257-5396. Question or comment about Obamacare for attorney Airene Williamson. Bob is on the line. Good morning, Bob.
Good morning. Bob?
Bob, are you with us?
I think we lost him.
I think we lost Bob. We'll put Bob back on hold. All right, so let's go back to Jim's case. He is a small business, so there are still requirements for people that have fewer than 50 employees.
Definitely. And that's like what I said earlier, is that a lot of people or a lot of businesses are probably trying to split their companies so they can, either not qualify for the 50, either, okay, I have 3 separate businesses, I'm just going to divide my employees so it doesn't come up to 50 employees or 50 full-time equivalent employees, whatever that means. The problem is the IRS will go after you. They will audit you definitely, especially if you have multiple businesses. You want to make sure that your accountant and your lawyer and your HR are in requirements or trained to see how the requirements are in compliance with Obamacare. But definitely there's a lot of requirements to see.
All right, we've got Bob back with us. Bob, good morning.
Good morning. My question regards employees that receive a 1099. Now, personally, I'm a courier.
Okay.
All right? And this gross income that you're talking about,
right?
Can that be the adjusted gross income or what?
It is adjusted gross income. And Bob, if you are an independent contractor or an employer hiring independent contractors, they are not counted as a full-time employee. And again, that's one of the loopholes that the Obamacare will institute, is that a lot of our businesses will probably try to hire independent contractors or temp employees, which, by the way, temp employees are considered employee of the temp agencies, not your employees. So one of the loopholes is that businesses are going to try not to hire employees, but independent contractors. So as if you're an employee hiring an independent contractor, they will not be counted. But you, Bob, as an independent contractor, or if you are, you obviously, in the land of the free, you still have to have your individual mandated healthcare insurance. So you cannot get it from your employer, but you still have to get it through you individually.
Well, what happens if you take your adjusted gross income and you bring it down to 0?
What do you mean? So if you're not making as much as you were before, is that the scenario?
Well, what I'm saying is, being a courier, we can deduct our mileage. So what if the mileage allowance takes our 1099 income down to 0?
Now, if the adjusted gross income is equivalent to less than if it falls within the federal poverty level, which is 100 to 400% of the federal poverty level, you might, as an independent contractor, and I'm talking about just an individual mandate, not as an employer insurance mandate. As an individual mandate, you may qualify as an individual to have subsidies from the government. Now, the problem is, how is your independent contractor business set up? Is it set up as a corporation? Is it set up as a sole proprietor? And depending on how it's set up, you may or may not qualify for a subsidy.
So being an independent contractor alone doesn't qualify me for a subsidy. I have to sign up for a corporation for myself?
That's exactly the short answer to that is yes. You may have to. And in fact, if you're a sole proprietor or operating your business under a sole proprietorship, and I talked about tax credits earlier, where small businesses that do not have to provide coverage but are providing them anyway are eligible for tax credits. But if you are a small business that is a sole proprietor, you will not be eligible for a tax credit, and you still will have to qualify for Obamacare. So the problem with this is that a lot of people will be discouraged in having sole proprietors. If I were you, Bob, I will think about either forming a corporation or an LLC, depending on your situation.
I understand. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Bob. 257-5396. Questions, comments about Obamacare, how you feel it may affect you as an individual or as a small or large business owner. So can businesses decide all of a sudden all of my part-time employees are now going to be recategorized as independent contractors?
Well, that's definitely one of the strategies that business will implement in 2013. And the point of all these Obamacare requirements, whether it's full-time employees or full-time equivalent, is that it's going to require some mental gymnastics from small business owners on how they're going to try to go around this. And not only will they be probably potentially subject to an IRS audit, but it will be an administrative nightmare for them, even if they want to follow the requirements of Obamacare as far as determining who their full-time employees are, how they're categorized. They will have to hire an accountant. They have to hire an attorney like me to determine whether or not their situation is falling under the Obamacare. And that's a lot of cost. That
is, we will be back to talking more about Obamacare with attorney Airene Williamson from the Williamson Law Office right after we check in with Mitch Kelly in the KDON 1 Nevada Credit Union Traffic Center.
And this update at 9:45 is brought to you by Constant Contact. Want your marketing plan to be as stress-free as the open road? Email marketing from Constant Contact's an easy-to-use tool that helps you to reach your customers in a place they're checking every day, their inbox. Sign up for a free trial from the industry-leading provider at ConstantContact.com. All quiet on the freeways, no slowdowns to warn you about. We do have an east side injury accident. Clark County Fire and Metro on scene on Flamingo, west of Sand Hill at Pearl. Also on the east side, northbound eastern at US 95, and a bad one in the southwest, Blue Diamond west of Durango at El Capitan. Your next update's at 10, and from the KDON 1 Nevada Credit Union Traffic Center, I'm Mitch Kelly on News Talk 720 KDWN.
First Option Mortgage, the people you call first.
Time is running out. Insurance rates on many government-backed loans are going up in just a few weeks. These increases will cost some homeowners tens of thousands of dollars over the life of the loan. Call First Option Mortgage today and lock in before the higher rates take effect. There are no application fees, and since First Option approves their own loans, you'll close fast and be assured of beating the deadline. Please don't wait. With mortgage rates still in the threes and insurance rates going up soon, the time to call First Option Mortgage is now. First Option Mortgage, 669-5400. 669-5400.
First Option Mortgage, the people you call first.
First Option Mortgage, LLC, 3770 Howard Hughes Parkway, Suite 195, Las Vegas, Nevada, 89169. License 3269.
Race weekend begins Thursday, March 7th at Samstown Hotel and Gambling Hall on Boulder Highway. Kick off your NASCAR weekend inside Samstown Live. There will be NASCAR driver appearances and an auction benefiting the Las Vegas chapter of Speedway Children's Charities. Fans will have a chance to bid on a ride-along and meet your favorite drivers in the pre-race parade lap for both the Samstown 300 and the Cobalt Tools 400, including NASCAR's most popular driver for the past 10 years, Dale Earnhardt Jr.
Hey race fans, this is AMP Energy driver Dale Earnhardt Jr. On Thursday, March the 7th, I'll be in Las Vegas. Come join me at Samstown, where I'll be on stage live and ready to answer your questions. AMP Energy. Rethink energy.
This event is hosted by Emmy Award-winning Fox Sports broadcaster Chris Myers. Doors open at 5 p.m. and it's free and open to the public. That's Thursday, March 7th at Samstown Hotel and Gambling Hall on Boulder Highway.
From Gentlemen Start Your Engines to the Checkered Flag, NASCAR is back on the air in Las Vegas on News Talk 720 KDWN. This Sunday, March 10th, you can hear the Cobalt Tools 400 live from the Las Vegas Motor Speedway. The broadcast begins at 11 a.m.
In a wreck, need an upset, call.
Listen, leave the real estate to the real estate professionals. My name is Ito Gavish of Gavish Real Estate, and I sell houses. Call me and my team of agents today at 255-1145.
Now back to KDWN's Legal Hour. Have a legal question? Call now. 257-KDWN. That's 257-5396.
KDWN News Time 9:48. About 10 minutes left in the program this morning with attorney Airene Williamson from the Williamson Law Office. Irene's number at work, 608-4072, or you could shoot her an email if you have a question for her that you don't want to discuss on the air. info@wlawoffice.com. We're discussing Obamacare this morning. 257-96 if you have a comment or question about Obamacare. Maybe you're a small business owner and don't quite understand. Oh, shocking how you wouldn't understand it because it's so black and white, what's going on here with Obamacare. But Airene can do her best to answer your questions. Now, we talked a lot about large businesses, but there are a lot of small businesses here in Southern Nevada with fewer than 50 employees.
Right.
Some of them may already provide insurance coverage for their employees. Should they keep doing that? Should they drop it? Does anybody know?
Well, yeah. I think in the long run, the small businesses will be disincentivized to continue to provide coverage for two reasons. One, at this point, since starting 2012, they will get a benefit of a tax credit. I think it's 35% of the premium rate that you're paying. And I believe by 2014, it goes up to 50%, which is a great thing for a tax credit if you are an employer with employees of 25 and below. However, this incentive will disappear in 6 years. So a lot of small businesses will probably try and not, or continue it for 6 years and drop it altogether, or they will be dinged for not providing qualified coverage. So if you are already a small business and you're providing coverage that is not up to par with Obamacare, you will be penalized for it.
So you think you're doing the right thing by providing coverage of some sort to your employees, and the government's going to tell you, nope, that's not good enough.
That's not good enough, and we will penalize you for it.
All right, we've got a phone call for you here. Good morning, Charlie. Charlie, good morning.
Hello?
Hi, Charlie. How are you?
This is Sam. Can you hear me? I don't have my radio on.
Yep, we can hear you, Sam. Go ahead.
Okay. My question is, I'm 70 years old, number one. Number two, I still own a construction company that I work at. And number three, I always go to the vets for all my medical needs. Do I have to carry Obamacare?
Are you covered right now with the veterans insurance?
Yes, I'm covered. Whatever I need, I just go to the VA and they take care of it for me.
The short answer,
a partial.
Right. The short answer to that is you don't have to. Most likely, the veterans insurance will meet the requirements of the Obamacare. So at this point, you are not required to do so. However, that's your individual mandate. Now we got to talk about your construction company. I don't know how your construction company is set up. I don't know how many employees you have, but depending on the size of your employees, the nature of your employee, and whether it's LLC or S Corp or however it's formed, you may have to look at the requirements under Obamacare so that your company can be in compliance.
This is, I'm a one-man type construction. If I need anybody, I just go down to work labor force or whatever and get someone that I need.
Right.
Because I don't always need, because I'm not that big anymore. As a matter of fact, I kind of downsized because I'm getting a little bit old.
Right. And my guess is if you do get help or labor, it's probably not exceeding 50. Is that correct?
50 what?
50 employees?
Oh, God, no. It would be one employee, if anything.
Right.
I haven't had to have any employees so far. If I do, I 1099 someone that I continually
that's even better.
Work.
That's even better, Charlie, because first of all, they're probably not an employee under the Obamacare definition. So you don't have to provide coverage to your employee, but obviously your employee as an individual will have to get a coverage of his own. But you as an individual, you already have a veterans coverage, which will most likely meet the Obamacare requirements. And two, as an independent contractor, you do not have to provide any coverage for your employees.
That's what I'm all licensed here, 5 licenses, bonded, insured.
Right.
I just, I don't need them that much. And if I do, I just go out and get them. I don't do large things anymore because I just tell them flat out, sorry, I only do repairs.
Right. And that's a good point, Charlie. And I'll talk about seasonal employees next week, but seasonal employees will play into whether or not you are under the Obamacare.
And how it works with the VA, we pay partials to the VA.
Right.
Let's say, for instance, I have a hernia operation, which I had one. It would cost the VA probably, let's say, $1,500 just to grab at a figure. And actually, in reality, they would probably invoice me out to $250.
Right.
That's the way it works.
And that's a good point, Charlie, because whatever they charge you or whatever the premium you have, but I'm guessing veterans insurance will probably qualify in Obamacare. But if it's any other type of insurance and you are paying a premium that is above 9.5%, you will be most likely qualified for a subsidy. So depending on your situation, you may or may not qualify for a subsidy.
All right. Hey, thanks for the call. We have other calls we have to get to this morning, so I appreciate your call, and we will now move on to Steve. Steve, good morning.
Morning. How are you folks?
I'm doing well, Steve. How are you?
I know you're up against it, so I'll make it quick. Legality of Obamacare has not been challenged. What I'm looking at is on constitutionally, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, please, is if we don't want judges legislating from the bench, and Obamacare is basically executive orders, which is the executive branch, and the agencies work for the executive branch.
Right.
We have them, in essence, determining what the law is going to be. We have this general thing that's thrown out by the legislature, and then they're defining how they see fit.
Exactly. So there is arguably a blending of the executive and legislative jobs or roles in there that could be unconstitutional. The problem is this has been held constitutional last year. So whether we like it or not, it's here to stay. Go ahead.
You know why?
Go ahead.
There's a case, a Supreme Court case called Wheeling Steel versus Fox.
Yes.
I don't know if you're aware of it, but basically what the case says is that a United States citizen is property of and a franchisee of the federal government. They basically took ownership of the total population.
Right. And that is unfortunate.
Contrast that against Cruikshank and Downs versus Bidwell and a few other cases.
Yeah.
But basically state there's two classes of citizenry.
Exactly. And, there's a lot of basis for the Supreme Court to have this held constitutional. One of them is it's under the federal commerce, and the federal government technically can and have jurisdiction over commercial enterprise, and one of them is healthcare. But obviously there's a lot of legality problems with Obamacare that people are now either objecting to or coming up with a legislation or some sort of an avenue to have this repealed. And one of them is it's unconstitutionally vague. Unconstitutionally vague is for laws that are so vague that people of ordinary reasonableness cannot understand what's being required of them. And I think this falls under that constitutionality question, and we'll see what happens in the next 2 years.
It's not going to work.
Yeah.
You know why?
Go ahead.
Because we're under public policy now. We're no longer under public law.
Right.
And under the plenary power of Congress to make all rules and regulations necessary for the territories, they can do anything they dang well please.
That's true. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you. You have a great day.
You too. So quickly, before we run out of time here, seasonal employees. I have a store. I hire extra people around the holidays. Do they count as employees all of a sudden?
Not necessarily. If you have under 50 employees and you have seasonal employees that are not working more than 6 months, and again, it's a complicated calculation.
Oh,
and
I should have paid attention in algebra.
You should have. But and we'll talk about it more in next week. But seasonal employees are typically not full-time employees, and they will not be counted unless they work more than 6 months for your company. And there's a lot of businesses in town that employ seasonal employees, so we'll go through it in more detail next week.
All right. We will do that. Any final words for this week from you, Irene?
Loopholes. I want to talk about a little bit about that. There's a lot of businesses, because of the Obamacare, that are probably thinking, what kind of loopholes can I do to either avoid it or lower the cost of my expenses? And the answer is, even if you do have loopholes, there's a lot of businesses that are thinking about laying off staff, understandably, either reduce hours or split their companies. I want to remind our business owners that there is a provision in the Obamacare, I think it's IRS 1020C, that if you are setting up your company with a purpose of avoiding tax, you will be audited and you will be dinged with penalties. So be sure before you do that, talk to an accountant or talk to me.
All right, Airene Williamson from the Williamson Law Office, 608-4072 to reach her at work, info@wlawoffice.com. We will continue with Obamacare next week because we didn't get to everything.
No, we don't. I already expected that, so we'll be ready for it.
All right, talk to you again next week.
Okay.
Ray Lucia coming your way next on News Talk 720 KDWN.
SafeLight Replace.
Julian with SafeLight Auto Glass.
So you think all auto glass companies are the same? Only America's largest gives you the reliability of this SafeLight advantage. It's what makes us different, with over 5,000 mobile glass shops in all 50 states. So we're always nearby, and the only national lifetime guarantee, keeping you covered wherever you are. Make the safe choice.
Just ask your insurance company for SafeLight or call 800-800-2727 or go to safelight.com.
Each year, there's one weekend that NASCAR fans in Las Vegas circle on their calendars. It's March 8th through 10th when NASCAR returns to the Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Tony Stewart and Jimmy Johnson are already texting about it.
Jimmy, winning Vegas was great. Think I'll do it again.
Dude, I've won 4 of them. How you gonna beat me?
Wasn't too hard last year.
March 8th through 10th, NASCAR returns to Las Vegas. Call 644-4444 or visit lvms.com today.